The humans departed quietly, leaving the council, must atone for its deeds part when the grand chamber of Xenos, Prime hummed with the low thrum of climate regulators and the soft chime of data streams, flowing through the air like invisible rivers. Towering arches of polished obsidian framed the circular room, where delegates from 37 species sat in tiered rings, their forms as varied as the stars they came from. Some had scales, others feathers. A few wore breathing masks or floated in anti-grav pods. But one seat stood empty. It was not flashy or oversized. It was simple, covered in plain blue-gray fabric, slightly worn at the edges. It was the human seat, and it had been empty for 17 days. Counselor Dale Mitchell had missed 3 full sessions. That was unusual. Dale was never late. He was the kind of man who arrived 10 minutes early, just to make sure the translation units were working properly. He carried a small notebook, always wrote by hand, and never raised his voice. Even when Kalar of the Virex slammed his 3-fingered fist on the table and called humans soft-brained sentimentalists. Now, Kalar stood again, his obsidian carapace clicking as he paced. "This silence is not accidental," he said, his voice sharp like broken glass. "Humans do not vanish. They talk, they argue. They broadcast their opinions across every channel. Yet for weeks, nothing. No signals from Earth, no response from their outposts. No trade updates. It reeks of deception." Elira Voss, the Celian delegate, watched him calmly. Her skin shimmered faintly in the chamber's soft light, shifting from silver to pale blue as her mood changed. She remembered her last meeting with Dale, just before the silence began. They had met in the garden atrium, where earth plants grew under artificial suns. He had offered her a cup of something called tea, which smelled like rain and old books. He did not speak much that day. He just looked at the sky through the dome and said, "Sometimes the right thing to do is to walk away." She had thought he meant retirement. Now she wondered. A junior aide scurried in, bowing low before projecting a new data stream above the central dais. Images flickered, satellite views of Earth. Cities still lit at night. Solar arrays rotating in orbit. Traffic drones moving along automated routes. Everything functioned perfectly. But there were no people. No crowds in the plazas. No ships lifting off from spaceports. No voices on emergency channels. It was as if every human had stepped out for a moment and never returned. "Impossible," muttered Torvin of the Galax, his tentacles twitching nervously. "A species of 9 billion cannot disappear overnight." "They didn't disappear," Elira said softly. "They left." The room fell quiet. Even Kalar stopped pacing. On Mars Colony Theta, Jake Ellis floated through the docking bay in his maintenance suit, humming an old Earth tune his grandfather used to sing. He had been on a deep-range repair mission near Phobos and only just returned. His comms had been down for most of the trip, so he hadn't heard the rumors. He expected the usual bustle, engineers shouting over wrenches, cargo bots beeping, maybe a friendly argument over who stole the last protein bar from the break room fridge. Instead, silence. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Inside, the lights were on. Consoles blinked with green status lights. A coffee mug sat on a workstation, still warm to the touch. A datapad lay open on a bench, displaying a half-finished report titled Atmospheric Scrubber Efficiency, Week 42. Jake called out. "Hello, anyone here?" His voice echoed down empty corridors. He checked the barracks. Beds were neatly made. Personal lockers stood open, photos still taped to the inside doors. Smiling faces, family gatherings, a dog wearing sunglasses. He went to the mess hall. Trays sat on tables. One held a bowl of what looked like oatmeal, now dry and cracked. A spoon rested beside it, no signs of struggle, no alarms, no emergency broadcasts. It was as if everyone had simply stood up, walked out, and never looked back. Jake's hands shook as he accessed the colony's main terminal. Logs showed normal operations up to 17 days ago. Then a single command, "Initiate Departure Protocol Alpha," signed by the colony director, Linda Cruz. No explanation, no warning. He tried to raise Earth Command. Static. He tried the nearest human freighter route. Silence. He even pinged the old lunar relay. Nothing but a looping automated message. "All personnel have been reassigned. Communications suspended indefinitely." Back on Xenos Prime, the council debated into the night. Some believed it was a trick. Others feared a new kind of weapon, one that made entire populations vanish without a trace. But Elira kept thinking about Dale's words. Walking away wasn't weakness. It was choice. And humans had always valued choice above all else. Weeks earlier, the Council had passed Resolution 689, a mandate requiring all member species to submit full genetic profiles for security harmonization. Most species complied without question. But the humans refused. They called it a violation of bodily sovereignty. Dale had argued for hours, his voice steady but firm. "You're asking us to hand over the blueprint of our children," he had said. "Not for medicine, not for science, for surveillance. We won't do it." The Council overruled him. They threatened trade sanctions, restricted human access to deep space lanes, even froze joint research funds. Dale had returned to his seat silent, and now he was gone. Elira pulled up archived footage from Geneva. Grainy public domain video showed a massive gathering in the United Nations Plaza. Not a protest, not a riot. Thousands of humans stood in quiet rows dressed in simple clothes. No banners, no chants. They boarded sleek silver arcs that rose silently into the clouds. No explosions, no speeches. Just calm, deliberate movement. Then the feed cut to static. She showed it to the Council. Kalar scoffed. They ran, like frightened prey. "No," Elira replied. "They chose, and that's what terrifies you." Meanwhile, on Mars, Jake recorded his final log. He sat alone in the command center, the red planet glowing through the viewport. "They didn't run," he said, voice rough but clear. "They left because we asked them to become something they weren't, and they said no. Not with guns, not with threats, just by walking away." He paused, looking at a photo on his wrist screen. His little sister laughing on a beach back in Oregon. "I hope they found peace. Because we sure won't find it without them." He powered down the comms array. The lights dimmed. Outside, the dust storms began to roll in, and across the galaxy the silence grew louder. The humans departed quietly. Leaving the Council must atone for its deeds. Part 2. Jake Ellis did not sleep that night. He walked the empty halls of Mars Colony Theta, his boots clicking against the metal floors. The only sound in a place that used to buzz with life. He checked every room, every storage bay, every airlock. Nothing was missing. Tools were in their racks. Food stores were full. Medical supplies untouched. It was not an evacuation. It was a departure. Calm, complete, and final. In the main comms room, he found a sealed message marked, "For any remaining human personnel." His hands trembled as he opened it. It was from Linda Cruz, the colony director. Her face appeared on the screen, tired but calm. "If you're seeing this, you were off-world when the call came," she said. "Earth has enacted global departure protocol. All humans are leaving. Not because we were defeated, but because we were disrespected. The Council wanted our bodies, our data, our silence. We gave them none. We chose to go. Don't follow us. Don't try to find us. Just remember why we left." The message ended with a soft chime. Jake sat back, staring at the blank screen. He thought about his sister, his parents, his friends back on Earth. Were they all gone too? Had they boarded those silver arcs and vanished into the stars without looking back? He felt no anger, only a deep, quiet ache. They had made a choice, and he respected it, even if it left him alone. Meanwhile, on Xenos Prime, the Council struggled to understand what had happened. At first, they assumed humans would return. They always came back, fixing broken engines, patching up diplomatic messes, inventing solutions no one else could imagine. But days turned to weeks and still no signal. No distress call. No plea for re-entry. Then the systems began to fail. The grav lifts in the Orion trade hub stuttered and stalled. They had been designed by human engineers, calibrated to tolerances no other species could replicate. Without regular updates from Earth-based servers, the alignment drifted. Cargo pods crashed. Workers were injured. Panic spread through the shipping lanes. On the southern rim, a deadly strain of the Krellis plague resurfaced. Human medics had kept it under control for decades with a vaccine that required monthly recalibration based on real-time genetic drift data. Without that data stream, the vaccine became useless. Thousands fell ill. Local governments begged the Council for help, but the Council had no answer. Their own scientists had never fully understood how the human formula worked. They had just used it. Elira Voss watched the reports pile up. She requested access to all human-designed systems across Council space. What she found shocked her. Nearly 60% of critical infrastructure, power grids, water purifiers, atmospheric processors, even the Council's own translation matrix, relied on human code, human logic, or human-built components. The galaxy had leaned on humans for so long it had forgotten how to stand on its own. Kalar refused to believe it. "We built this alliance before humans joined," he snapped during a closed session. "We will manage without them." "We didn't build it," Elira replied quietly. "We patched it, and humans were the glue." Back on Mars, Jake decided to do one last thing before shutting everything down. He activated the deep-range telescope array, usually used for tracking asteroid belts. He pointed it toward Sol system. Earth appeared as a pale blue dot just as it always had. Cities still glowed. Weather satellites spun in orbit. But no ships launched. No signals pulsed outward. It was a world that functioned perfectly yet held no people. He zoomed in on Geneva. The United Nations building stood empty. Flags hung limp in the windless air. In the plaza, a single bench remained where thousands had gathered. On it lay a folded piece of paper caught in a sunbeam. The camera couldn't read it, but Jake knew what it said. "Goodbye." He turned off the telescope. Then he walked to the greenhouse module. Tomatoes grew on vines. Lettuce sprouted in neat rows. Bees hummed in their artificial hive, part of an old pollination experiment. He picked a ripe tomato, warm from the grow lights, and ate it slowly. It tasted like summer, like home. He recorded another log, not for the council, but for whoever might find it someday. "Humans didn't leave because they were weak," he said, wiping juice from his chin. "They left because they were strong enough to say no. They gave us everything: medicine, art, clean energy, even their time, and we asked for more. We asked for their dignity. And when they said no, we called them stubborn. Now they're gone, and we're realizing how much we took for granted." On Xenos Prime, a young Celian aide named Maya Holt worked late in the archives. She wasn't a high-ranking official, just a linguist assigned to catalog old human transmissions. Most of her colleagues had dismissed the task as pointless now, but Mia kept listening. She believed language held truth even in silence. She found something strange. In the final week before departure, humans had sent out thousands of data packets, not to the council but into open space, unencrypted, unlabeled. She decoded one. It contained a children's story about a fox who gave up his den so others could learn to build their own. Another held a symphony composed entirely of wind and water sounds. A third was a step-by-step guide to purifying seawater using nothing but sunlight and sand. None of it was hidden. None of it demanded payment. It was all just there, for anyone who cared to look. Mia brought her findings to Elira. "They didn't just leave," Mia said, eyes wide. "They left lessons." Elira studied the files. "They knew we'd struggle," she murmured. "So they gave us tools, not to control us, but to help us grow." Kalar heard about Mia's discovery and demanded the files be classified. Sentimental nonsense, he called it. "We need engineers, not poets." But Elira refused. She uploaded the files to the public archive. Within hours, a Galax engineer used the water purification guide to save a drought-stricken village. A Virex medic adapted the Fox story into a training module about patient consent. Slowly, quietly, the human gifts began to take root. Jake, still alone on Mars, received a faint ping on an old emergency band. It wasn't from Earth. It was from Xenos Prime, a short message sent by Mia. "We're listening now." He smiled for the first time in weeks. He typed back, "It's a start." Then he powered down the colony for good. He took one last look at the red dunes outside, climbed into a small shuttle, and set course for the asteroid belt. He didn't know what he'd find out there. Maybe other stragglers, maybe silence. But he wouldn't give up. Someone had to remember what humans stood for. As his shuttle lifted off, Mars Colony Theta went dark. Lights off. Systems offline. Only the greenhouse remained active, its plants growing under silent suns tended by no one. And far away in 1,000 worlds, beings began to read, to listen, to learn. The humans were gone, but their voice, soft, steady, and full of hope, still echoed through the stars. The humans departed quietly. Leaving the council must atone for its deeds. Part 3. Brant Lowe stood in the empty human embassy on Xenos Prime, his boots echoing on the polished floor. He was the last human-born liaison still present in council space. He had chosen to stay behind, not out of loyalty to the council, but because he believed someone needed to speak for what was left behind. His dark hair was streaked with gray now, and his eyes held the weight of too many sleepless nights. He carried a small data crystal in his pocket, warm from his touch. It held the final message from Earth's governing council, recorded just hours before the arcs lifted off. Outside, the city buzzed with tension. Without human-designed regulators, the atmospheric processors in the lower districts had begun to fail. Smog curled through alleyways. Tempers flared. Species that once traded peacefully now argued over dwindling resources. The council had promised stability, but stability had been built on human hands, and those hands were gone. Brant walked to the central chamber, where the council was holding an emergency session. Kalar stood at the podium demanding military action. "We must send scouts to Sol System," he insisted. "If humans have hidden weapons or secret bases, we need to find them before they strike." Elira Voss shook her head. "They didn't strike. They left." "There's a difference." "Cowardice is still a threat," Kalar shot back. Brant stepped forward then, his voice calm but firm. "I have something to share." All eyes turned to him. He inserted the data crystal into the central console. The chamber lights dimmed. A hologram appeared. Earth's last council chamber, empty except for one figure. An elderly woman with silver hair and kind eyes. She wore no uniform, just a simple tunic. Her name was Dr. Helen Cho, former head of the Global Ethics Board. "To the Galactic Council," she began, "we do not speak to you in anger. We speak in sorrow. For years we offered our knowledge, our labor, our compassion. We repaired your ships, healed your sick, taught your young to dream beyond borders. And in return you asked for our trust, then treated it as weakness. You demanded our genes, our children's futures, our silence. You called it security. We called it control." She paused, her gaze steady. "We will not be your tools. We will not be your lesson. We choose to walk away, not to punish you, but to protect what we are. We leave behind our systems, our art, our science, not as weapons, but as gifts. Use them wisely. Or don't. The choice is yours now." The hologram faded. Silence filled the chamber. Even Kalar looked shaken. Brant removed the crystal. That was recorded 17 days ago. The same day every human vanished. They didn't flee. They chose. And they left us a mirror. Elira stood. "We must respond. Not with force, but with honesty. We must admit what we've done." But Kalar scoffed. "Admit to whom? They're gone. Let them stay gone. We'll rebuild without them." Yet the galaxy was crumbling faster than anyone expected. On the mining world of Keswick 9, human-built ore sorters shut down without warning. Raw materials piled up unusable. On the Celian homeworld, a solar flare knocked out the main power grid, normally stabilized by human algorithms. Cities went dark for 3 days. Riots broke out. Mia Holt, the young linguist, worked tirelessly in the archives. She had begun translating more of the open space data packets. One contained blueprints for a self-repairing water filtration unit. Another held a musical scale designed to calm trauma in young minds. A third was a simple story about a gardener who planted seeds in a neighbor's barren field. Not for thanks, but because the world needed more green. She shared these with local communities. On a drought-stricken Virex colony, they built the filter. Clean water flowed for the first time in months. Children laughed as they drank. Elders wept. Word spread. Humans hadn't just vanished. They had left a path forward. Back on Xenos Prime, Brant met Elira in the garden atrium, the same place Dale Mitchell had once shared tea. "They knew we'd fail at first," Brant said, sitting on a bench beneath a fake earth oak. "But they also knew someone would eventually listen." "Do you think they'll ever come back?" Elira asked. "I don't know," Brant replied. "But maybe they don't need to. Maybe the point was for us to grow up." Meanwhile, Jake Ellis drifted near the asteroid belt in his small shuttle. He had found a derelict cargo hauler, half buried in rock and ice. Inside, he discovered logs from its last human crew. They had received the departure order while hauling supplies to a research outpost. They set the ship on autopilot, left their logs intact, and boarded a rescue pod bound for the nearest ark. No panic, no regret, just duty, then peace. Jake salvaged what he could: food packs, oxygen tanks, a working comms unit. He patched his shuttle and sent a message to Xenos Prime. Found more human records. Sending data. They planned this. Every step. Elira received the transmission. She played it for the council. The log showed meticulous planning. Backup systems left running, fail-safes activated, even farewell notes tucked into maintenance panels. It wasn't chaos. It was care. That night, a group of junior delegates, Celian Galax, even 2 young Virex, gathered in secret. They drafted a proposal, Resolution 771, the Atonement Accords. It called for full transparency about the Council's treatment of humans, reparations to worlds harmed by policies enabled by human labor, and the creation of a memorial, not to mourn, but to remember. Kalar found out and tried to block it. "We do not apologize to absentees," he declared. But public opinion had shifted. News of the water filters, the medical guides, the quiet generosity in every data packet had spread. Species that once mocked human sentimentality now saw it as strength. Protests formed outside the Grand Chamber. Signs read, "They gave us light. We turned it into chains." And, "Listen like they taught us." Faced with growing unrest, the Council agreed to a vote. Brant stood in the chamber again, this time not as a liaison, but as a witness. He said nothing. He just held up the data crystal. The vote passed. Resolution 771 was adopted. As the news spread, Mia placed a single earth flower, a white daisy, on the empty human seat. It had been grown from seeds found in the Mars greenhouse sent by Jake. The petals trembled in the chamber's soft breeze. Far away in the silent void between stars, the human ark sailed on. And on Xenos Prime, for the first time in decades, the Council sat in true silence, not of absence, but of reflection. The humans departed quietly. Leaving the Council must atone for its deeds part. 4 MIA Holt floated in zero gravity inside the derelict human research station orbiting Proxima Centauri, her breath fogging the inside of her helmet. The station had been marked inactive for months, but a faint energy signature had drawn her here. A tiny pulse, like a heartbeat. She had come alone, against orders, driven by a feeling she couldn't explain. The Council thought the station was empty. Mia knew better. Humans never left things truly empty. She drifted through silent corridors, her boots magnetized to the floor plating. Lights flickered on as she passed, triggered by motion sensors still active after all this time. In the main lab, consoles glowed softly, displaying rotating models of protein structures and climate simulations. Nothing was locked. Nothing was hidden. It was as if the humans had stepped out for coffee and expected someone to keep working. Then she found it. The archive room. It wasn't labeled. No grand doors or security scanners, just a plain door with a small sign that read, "For those who learn to listen." She opened it slowly. Inside, rows of storage units hummed quietly, each one filled with crystalline data cores. No encryption, no passwords. Just a simple interface that asked one question: "What do you need?" Mia whispered, "Help." The system responded instantly. A core slid out. She plugged it into her datapad. Files unfolded, medical schematics for a portable dialysis unit, instructions for rebuilding coral reefs using sound frequencies, a database of over 10,000 folk songs from Earth, each tagged with emotional context and cultural notes. One folder contained children's drawings, stick figures holding hands under rainbows labeled "Pieces sharing your crayons." She sat on the floor, tears welling behind her goggles. This wasn't a weapons cache or a spy vault. It was a classroom. A gift box, a hand reaching out from the void. Back on Xenos Prime, the Council struggled to implement Resolution 771. Reparations were slow. Old habits died hard. Some delegates still muttered that humans had abandoned their duties. But Alara pushed forward. She opened the first human knowledge hub in the public district. A simple building with open terminals all loaded with the data packets Mia had decoded. At first only a few came, then more. A Galax mother used a human-designed fever reducer to save her child. A Virex engineer adapted a solar sail blueprint to power a remote village. Word spread that the humans hadn't just left tools, they'd left kindness. Mia returned from Proxima Centauri with dozens of data cores. She didn't hand them to the Council. She gave them directly to schools, clinics, and community centers across the rim. She taught others how to ask the system questions. "It doesn't give you what you want," she explained. "It gives you what you need." One day, a young Celian boy named Ren came to her with a broken leg and a broken spirit. His homeworld had been hit by toxic blooms after the human environmental monitors went offline. He asked, "Can your humans fix the air?" Mia loaded a core labeled Ecological Renewal. It contained a step-by-step guide to rebuilding soil using fungi and native grasses, plus a simple device that could filter airborne toxins using recycled metal and sunlight. Ren's eyes lit up. "We can build this," he said, and they did. Within weeks, his village planted the first clean crop in years. The council took notice, not with orders but with quiet respect. Brant Lowe watched from the sidelines. He no longer attended council sessions. Instead, he walked the streets, listening. He heard human music playing in a Galactic cafe, saw children drawing earth animals in schoolyards, found a Virex elder teaching meditation using a human breathing technique. The humans were gone, but their presence grew stronger every day. Jake Ellis, still drifting in the outer rim, sent regular updates. He had turned his shuttle into a mobile archive, collecting abandoned human outposts and preserving their contents. He found a nursery on Europa where hydroponic systems still grew strawberries. He found a library on Titan filled with printed books, real paper, real ink. He scanned them all and beamed the files into open space just as the humans had done. They didn't believe in hoarding knowledge, he told Mia in a message, so neither will I. Meanwhile, Kalar remained silent. He stopped attending sessions. Some said he was ashamed. Others said he was plotting. But one evening, Illyra found him standing alone in the Human Knowledge Hub, staring at a screen showing a video of Earth children planting trees. His carapace was dull, his posture slumped. They taught their young to care for things they'd never see grow, he said without turning. We teach ours to conquer what they can take today. Illyra didn't reply. She just stood beside him, watching the children laugh as dirt covered their hands. The real turning point came when Wren's village used the human air filter to save a neighboring Virex settlement. The two species had been enemies for generations, but clean air didn't care about borders. They worked together side by side, breathing the same safe wind. News of their cooperation spread faster than any decree. Maya stood before the council again, not as a junior aide, but as a voice for the people. The humans didn't leave us broken, she said. They left us a chance. Every file, every song, every drawing, it's an invitation, not to replace them, but to become better ourselves. That night, the council voted unanimously to expand the knowledge hubs to every member world. They renamed the initiative the Listening Project. No more demands. No more extraction. Just learning. In the quiet of her quarters, Mia played a human lullaby she'd found in the archives. It was simple, just a woman's voice and a soft piano. The words were in English, but she didn't need translation. The feeling was clear. Comfort, hope, gentle goodnight. Outside her window, Xenos Prime glowed with new lights, solar panels built from human designs, water towers shaped like earth trees, murals of human faces smiling beside alien ones. The humans were gone, but their legacy wasn't in monuments or machines. It was in the way a child shared a filter with an enemy, in the way a counselor stood silent before a video of planting trees, in the way the galaxy slowly began to listen. The humans departed quietly, leaving the council must atone for its deeds part. 1 year after the last human vanished, the council gathered not in the grand chamber, but in an open field on the edge of Xenos Prime's capital city. The ground had been cleared of buildings, paved roads, and surveillance drones. In their place stood a single structure, the Silence Memorial. It was not tall or flashy. It was a circle of smooth stone benches surrounding a shallow pool of water. In the center floated a single white daisy, its roots wrapped in soil from Mars Colony Theta. There were no names carved, no speeches scheduled, no flags raised, just quiet space for reflection. The design had come from a human file labeled, How to Remember Without Owning. Illyra Voss sat on one of the benches, her shimmering skin calm in the morning light. Beside her sat Mia Holt, now recognized across the rim as the keeper of human knowledge. Brant Lowe stood a few steps away, his hands in his pockets, watching the water ripple. Even Kalar came, though he stayed at the edge of the circle, his carapace duller than before, his usual bluster gone. He did not sit. He just stood, and for the first time listened. No one spoke. They did not need to. The memorial was not for words. It was for presence. For the space humans had left behind, and the space they had made inside others. In the weeks leading up to this day, the Council had completed the final steps of Resolution 771. All records of the genetic mandate had been declassified. Trade routes once restricted from human worlds were reopened as free learning corridors. Funds were redirected to rebuild systems using human blueprints, but with local hands. No more dependence, only partnership with memory. Schools now taught not just human science, but human ethics. Children learned that strength could be gentle, that saying no could be an act of courage, and that silence could carry more truth than 1,000 speeches. On a distant world near the southern rim, Ren and his friends finished building their 10th air filter. This one stood in a former war zone, where Virex and Galax children now played together under clean skies. They planted earth flowers around its base, marigolds, sunflowers, and daisies grown from seeds sent by Jake Ellis. Ren recorded a short message and sent it into open space. "Thank you for teaching us to breathe together." Jake himself had stopped drifting. He had settled on a quiet moon orbiting a nameless star, turning an old supply depot into a living archive. He grew tomatoes in recycled containers, played human music on loop, and taught any traveler who stopped by how to read a star chart the human way, not just for navigation but for wonder. He never tried to find the arcs. He didn't need to. He carried Earth with him. Back on Xenos Prime, the Council held its first session without a single argument in months. When a dispute arose over water rights on a dry moon instead of voting, or threatening sanctions, the delegates asked, what would the humans do? Mia pulled up a file, a story about 2 villages sharing a river by taking turns, not by force, but by trust. They adopted the method. It worked. That evening, after the memorial gathering, Elira walked with Mia through the city. The streets were different now. Less noise, more green. Vines climbed the sides of buildings. Public fountains played soft melodies based on human lullabies. A group of children sat in a circle sharing stories, some in Celian, some in Virex, some in broken English they'd learned from old files. They laughed at the same jokes, even if they didn't understand every word. "Do you think they know?" Mia asked softly. "Do you think the humans know we're trying?" Elira looked up at the stars. "I think they hoped we would. That's why they left the way they did. Not to punish us, but to give us room to grow. Far beyond the known rim, in a star system, not marked on any galactic map, a fleet of silver arcs drifted through a nebula painted in soft purples and golds. Inside one ship, a small boy named Leo sat with his grandmother on a balcony overlooking the void. He held a smooth stone she had given him, taken from a beach in California, Earth, before they left. "Why did we go, Grandma?" he asked, as he did every night. She smiled, her eyes warm. "Because sometimes the best way to teach others to be kind is to stop letting them treat you unkindly." She pointed to the swirling colors outside. "We didn't leave to hide. We left to live. And maybe, just maybe, our leaving gave them a chance to become who they were meant to be." Leo nodded. He didn't fully understand yet, but he would. Just as the humans had always believed, understanding takes time, patience, and space to grow. On Xenos Prime, the Silence Memorial filled with visitors as night fell. Some sat, some wept, some simply stood and breathed. No one took photos. No one claimed ownership. They just honored the absence that had taught them presence. Brant Lowe placed a small cup of tea on the edge of the pool, the same kind Dale Mitchell used to drink. The steam curled into the cool air, then vanished like a whisper returning home. And across the galaxy, in 1,000 quiet acts of repair, sharing, and listening, the Council began its true work. Not of ruling, but of atoning. Not with grand declarations, but with daily choices to be better. The humans were gone, but their lesson remained, echoing not in monuments but in moments. A shared filter, a translated song, a child's hand offering a flower to an old enemy, and in that quiet echo, the galaxy finally learned how to listen.